The grand ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, laughter echoing between polished marble columns as guests in glittering gowns and tailored suits sipped champagne. It was a gala meant to display elegance, power, and wealth, an event where the finest families gathered to celebrate themselves. A string quartet played soft melodies in the background, almost lost beneath the hum of conversations. Then, piercing through the music and chatter, came the innocent but powerful cry of a child. Mamie. Heads turned sharply toward the sound. At the center of the hall, a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8, with wide brown eyes and an innocence etched in every gesture, had broken free from the side of his guardian. He rushed forward, his little arms outstretched, pointing directly at someone no one expected. All eyes followed his gaze. There, standing at the far end of the hall with a mop in her hands and a bucket at her feet, was the cleaning woman, the fictional. She froze, her body stiff, her face paling as dozens of elite eyes landed on her. She wore a simple gray uniform, her hair tied back carelessly, her shoes worn thin from long hours of scrubbing marble floors. For a moment, silence gripped the room. Gasps spread like wildfire, followed by murmurs. Guests exchanged incredulous glances, their whispers sharp as knives. Is he calling her mother? That's impossible. Why would the child of such a prominent family recognize a cleaning woman? The boy, unbothered by the weight of judgment hanging in the air, ran straight to her. His shoes clicked against the marble, his little bow tie bouncing with every hurried step. When he reached her, he threw himself into her legs, hugging her tightly as though the entire world had disappeared. Mamie, he repeated, louder this time, his voice filled with joy, not shame. The woman trembled. Her calloused hands slowly moved to rest on the child's shoulders. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her heart raced, her chest rising and falling as though she were fighting the urge to cry. Around them, the whispers turned into speculation. At the head table, a distinguished man with graying temples and a stern jaw rose to his feet. He was the child's legal guardian, a figure of authority and wealth, known for his unyielding composure. Yet now, a vein pulsed at his temple, and his eyes narrowed dangerously at the sight before him. "Gabriel," he thundered, his voice carrying across the hall. "Return here at once." But Gabriel clung tighter to the woman's leg, shaking his head vigorously. "No, I want Mamie. She's my Mamie." The room rippled with unease. Guests leaned closer to one another, some smirking, others sneering, a few even pitying. The woman finally knelt, lowering herself to the boy's level. Her eyes glistened as she cupped his face gently, searching his gaze as though she were seeing a reflection of something she had lost long ago. "Gabriel," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet filled with a depth of emotion that silenced even the harshest whispers. The boy beamed. "I knew it was you. I told them. I told them I'd find you." The guardian strode forward, his polished shoes striking the marble like a warning. His face was flushed with both anger and fear, his posture rigid. The crowd parted instinctively, granting him a clear path. "Step away from him," he ordered the woman, his tone sharp and commanding. "This child does not belong to you." But Gabriel's small hands clung tighter to her. He looked up at his guardian, then back at the woman, confusion clouding his innocent features. "But she is my Mamie. I remember her." Gasps echoed again. The woman's hands trembled as tears finally slipped down her cheeks. She pressed her lips together, fighting a war inside herself, between silence and revelation, between survival and truth. The guests leaned in, hungry for scandal, craving drama. This was no longer just a gala. It was a spectacle, a revelation tearing through the very fabric of the perfect image the host family had built. And in that moment, as chandeliers sparkled overhead and the weight of every gaze pressed down on her, the fictional finally opened her mouth to speak. Her voice quivered at first, soft as though she were afraid of her own words, yet strong enough to carry into the tense silence. "Gabriel," she said, caressing his cheek as though afraid he would vanish if she blinked. "Meu filho, my son." The words struck the hall like thunder. A collective gasp erupted, followed by a chorus of whispers. Some laughed in disbelief, others clutched their pearls, and a few leaned forward, their curiosity piqued. The guardian's face drained of color, his jaw tightening so fiercely that the muscle in his cheek twitched. "You dare," he hissed, stepping closer until he towered over her. "You dare claim what is not yours." The woman's knees wobbled beneath her, yet she did not move. She rose slowly to her feet, keeping her hand protectively on Gabriel's shoulder. Her eyes, once filled with timidity, now held a quiet fire. "I do not claim," she said, voice trembling but firm. "I remember. I lived it. The night he was born, the lullaby I sang, the warmth of his tiny hand wrapped around my finger. These are not things a stranger invents." Gabriel clutched her uniform, burying his face against her. "I told them I wasn't crazy," he mumbled. "I told them I remembered your voice in my dreams." The Guardian's fists clenched. "Enough of this madness." "Guards," he barked, raising his hand to summon the men at the door. Two uniformed figures began moving through the crowd, their boots heavy on the marble floor. But before they could reach her, a sound stopped them, the unmistakable sob of a child. Gabriel's tears spilled freely now, his small frame trembling as he clung tighter to the woman. "Please don't take her away. Please. Don't let them." His plea pierced through the grandeur of the room, louder than violins, sharper than whispers. The guests, who moments ago indulged in gossip, began to shift uncomfortably. Some averted their eyes. Others looked at the Guardian with thinly veiled disapproval. There was cruelty in wealth, yes, but even the coldest hearts could not entirely ignore the raw truth of a child's tears. The Guardian faltered for just a breath, his eyes flickering as though old memories clawed at him. But pride snapped him back. "You are delusional," he spat at the woman. "A mere cleaning girl, daring to weave fantasies in my house. You think this performance will win you sympathy? That it will change facts? This child has been mine for years. He knows nothing of you." The woman's chin lifted slightly, dignity etched in her posture despite her simple uniform. "If he knows nothing of me, then why does he cry for me in his sleep?" she asked. The question hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. The Guardian's lips parted, but no words came. His silence fed the crowd's suspicion. One of the guests, an older woman draped in emerald silk, rose from her chair. Her voice cut through the tension, crisp and elegant. "Perhaps it is not madness, after all. The boy clearly recognizes her. And if memory serves me right, there were rumors, years ago, of a missing infant, a scandal quickly buried." Her words ignited the room. More whispers, more shifting eyes. The Guardian's mask of control began to fracture. He turned sharply toward the woman, his voice low but laced with venom. "You will stop this now, or I swear." She didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, faded cloth. It was worn and frayed, the kind of thing no wealthy family would ever keep. But embroidered in its corner was a single initial, G. Gasps echoed again. Gabriel's eyes widened, recognition flashing like lightning. "That's mine," he exclaimed. "That's my blanket. I remember it." The Guardian lunged forward, trying to snatch it from her hand, but she held it tightly, her knuckles whitening with the effort. For the first time, the crowd stirred not against her, but against him. Murmurs of "what is he hiding?" and "why would he silence her if she lies?" spread quickly. Gabriel's sobs quieted, replaced by determination. He pulled away from the woman just enough to stand in front of her, shielding her with his small body. His voice wavered but carried a courage far beyond his years. "If she is lying, then let the truth come out. If she is my Mamie, then no one can stop it." A ripple of agreement passed through the guests. The string quartet had long since stopped playing. The gala had become a courtroom, the people its jury. The woman's tears fell silently as she laid her hand gently on Gabriel's shoulder, her heart torn between fear and love. She knew this moment could cost her everything, her job, her safety, perhaps even her freedom. But looking at the boy, at the child she had once held and thought lost to her forever, she found strength she didn't know she had. Her gaze locked with the Guardian's, unyielding now. "You can strip me of titles, you can drag me from this hall, but you cannot erase the truth. He is my son. Blood calls to blood. And whether tonight or tomorrow, the truth will rise. Even you cannot bury it forever." The Guardian's face burned crimson. He opened his mouth to unleash another command, but before he could speak, Gabriel reached for the woman's hand and held it firmly, as though binding her to him with a vow no man could sever. The hall vibrated with tension, every heartbeat echoing in the silence. Chandeliers glittered above like silent witnesses. And there, in the middle of a world that had tried to keep them apart, mother and child stood side by side, fragile yet unbreakable, daring anyone to deny what fate had written into their very souls. The silence in the ballroom stretched like a taut string, threatening to snap under the weight of truth. The Guardian's authority, once unquestioned, now crumbled before the undeniable bond between mother and son. His hand trembled as he raised it, desperate to restore the power slipping from his grasp, but his voice faltered when he saw the eyes fixed upon him. eyes that no longer admired, but judged. The wealthy and powerful who once bowed before him now murmured with suspicion, their loyalty shattered by a child's cry and a mother's tears. Gabriel's small fingers intertwined with the woman's, fragile yet defiant, his gaze burning with a purity that could not be corrupted by lies. "I know you," he whispered, but the words carried like thunder through the hall. "You're my Mamie. I don't care what anyone says." His courage was a spark, igniting something unshakable in her soul. She drew herself taller, no longer just a cleaning woman in a faded uniform, but a mother reclaiming her place in the light. The guests, whose laughter once filled the chamber, now leaned forward, unable to tear themselves from the unfolding revelation. An elderly man, stooped but sharp-eyed, rose and spoke with a tremor of memory. "I remember that scandal. A child disappeared, whispers of betrayal, and a cover-up so swift that no one dared to question it. Perhaps tonight is not madness, but justice returning to claim its due." Gasps rippled across the hall. The guardian's composure shattered, his mask slipping to reveal the fear beneath. "Lies," he barked, but the word rang hollow. His authority had dissolved into desperation. The woman stepped forward, holding the faded blanket with the embroidered G. She lifted it high for all to see. "This is the last piece of him I held before he was taken from me. I scrubbed floors and polished shoes while searching for my son in the faces of strangers, praying the world would give him back. Tonight, my prayer has been answered." Her voice rose with a power that no wealth could buy, echoing through marble and glass until it silenced even the harshest whispers. "You may clothe yourself in riches, you may stand above me in position, but you will never stand above the truth. And the truth is this child's heart knows his mother, and no decree can erase the blood that binds us." Tears welled in the eyes of even the most stoic guests. A woman in pearls dabbed her cheeks. A man once hardened by business softened in his stance. What was once scandal now felt like destiny unfolding, too raw and real to be denied. Gabriel, sensing the shift, stood taller beside her. His small voice quivered with the weight of innocence. "I don't want mansions or toys. I just want my Mamie. If love is a lie, then let me be fooled, but I know it isn't." The guardian's face contorted with rage, yet he was powerless, for the boy's words pierced the armor of reputation and wealth. He lunged forward once more, intent on ripping Gabriel away, but the crowd itself rose in quiet defiance. The guests, once his allies, closed ranks with their presence, forming a human barrier. It was no longer the woman standing alone against him. It was truth against falsehood, love against control, justice against oppression. The chandelier's crystals shimmered above, as though applauding the moment. A hush settled, thick and sacred, as the weight of centuries of injustice seemed to lift in that single breath. The woman bent down and pressed her forehead against her son's, tears falling freely, but joy glowing through every drop. "I will never lose you again," she vowed, her words trembling with both sorrow and triumph. The guardian, cornered and trembling with fury, spat words of venom. "You'll regret this. Without me, you are nothing." She turned to him, her eyes no longer meek, but blazing with an unbreakable fire. "Without you, I am finally free. And with him, I am everything." The crowd erupted, not in cheers but in the kind of silence that carries more power than thunder. They saw her not as a servant, but as a mother who had endured, suffered, and risen unbroken. They saw Gabriel not as a possession of wealth, but as the living testament of love that could not be stolen. The guardian, stripped of his facade, stumbled backward, retreating beneath the weight of judgment. His empire of influence, his carefully crafted image, had collapsed in a single night. For the first time, the ballroom did not belong to him, it belonged to truth. Gabriel tugged at his mother's hand, his eyes sparkling through tears. "Can we go home now?" he asked softly, the kind of question that melted every heart in the room. She smiled through her trembling lips, nodding as though sealing a promise carved into eternity. "Yes, meu filho. We are finally going home." As they walked toward the great doors, the crowd parted, not in scorn but in reverence. Heads bowed slightly, acknowledging not her station but her strength. Every step echoed like the beat of a drum, a march of victory that no orchestra could match. Behind them, the once glittering gala dissolved into whispers of awe, the scandal transformed into legend. They spoke not of the guardian's wealth, nor of the chandeliers or gowns, but of the night a cleaning woman lifted her head as a queen, crowned not with jewels, but with the unshakable love of her child. Outside, the night embraced them with a quiet sky dotted by stars, as though the heavens themselves bore witness. Gabriel lifted his face to the breeze, laughing softly through his tears. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him as though the universe had finally returned what it had stolen. In that embrace, there was no marble, no chandeliers, no wealth, only love so pure that it redefined everything. And those who watched from the windows of the great hall knew they had seen something far greater than any gala could offer. The triumph of a bond that neither time, nor lies, nor power could sever. It was not merely an ending, it was a beginning. A story whispered in the echoes of the ballroom, carried in the hearts of those who bore witness, retold as proof that truth may bend beneath cruelty, but will never break. That love may be hidden beneath dust, but will always shine again. And that even the humblest soul can rise above the mighty when armed with nothing but the power of the heart. For long after the lights dimmed and the music ceased, the tale lived on. The night a child cried Mamíe in the midst of grandeur, and a mother's tears turned scandal into legend, shattering the walls between poverty and wealth, silencing lies with love, and leaving behind a truth so magnificent it could never again be denied.